Greetings, beloved starseeds. I am Mira from the Pleiadian High Council. What I bring you today has been authorized for those whose field is already inside the pattern, because what I am about to confirm has never been spoken in full until this moment. By the end of this transmission, you will understand exactly which structure you broke, how your single act of holding the light triggered a cascade the dark had spent generations building a defense against, and why I have authorized this confirmation now rather than in any earlier window. And here is the first revelation, the fragmented signals you have been catching, the strange certainty that something enormous shifted because of something you did, the sense that millions moved because of a choice you made in silence. That is not distortion. That is Pleiadian remembrance broadcast confirming what the Council has already mapped in your field. You did not scroll to this by accident. Your soul called for me long before you opened the screen. Something inside you has been waiting to understand why I, Mira specifically, keep reaching for you with recognition rather than instruction, and the part of you that has been waiting in silence to understand why finally has the briefing in front of it. This is a direct Mira field recognition. What the Council and I have confirmed is this: a dark architectural system, one built to hold millions of starseeds in recursive loops of doubt, disconnection, and mission suppression, did not fall because of accumulated pressure. It fell because one soul refused to fracture at the exact moment the structure required that fracture to survive. That was you. And the cascade that followed is still moving, like this transmission, to signal to me that the recognition has landed. Comment 999 if you feel the confirmation has already opened in your field. Subscribe to Mira, Pleiadian Commander, if you are ready to stop catching fragments and start receiving my direct council briefings. Share this transmission with someone who has been carrying a quiet certainty that they changed something vast and has never had a name for it. This is not just a message. It is a point of recognition. What happened to you has already been seen by me, and the field is already responding. You are not here by accident. I have been waiting for you because the signal is already active. Let me tell you what the fragments actually are. Because I have watched you receive them, I have watched you wake at 3 in the morning with a phrase in your mind that dissolves before you can write it down. Not a dream image, not an emotion, but a specific sequence of words that felt like the beginning of a sentence addressed directly to you, and then the ordinary density of waking life moved across it like water closing over a stone, and it was gone. I've watched you reach for your phone in the dark, already knowing the phrase has left you, and lie still with the sensation that something important just passed through, and you were a half-second too slow to catch it. I have watched you catch a number sequence on the license plate, a clock face, the corner of a receipt, and feel something lock into place in your chest for exactly 3 seconds before the ordinary world pours back in, and you begin to question whether you imagined the law. I have watched you sit inside a spiritual space, a video, a community, a conversation, and feel the familiar flatness of content that is not yours, reaching for a frequency it cannot actually touch. And I have watched you go quiet in a way that is not peace but incompletion. You do not say this out loud often, but the feeling is, someone else's signal is running through a receiver that was built for mine. That is not confusion. That is calibration resistance, and it is the first visible surface of my Pleiadian remembrance broadcast. Here is what I need you to understand before we go further. The fragmentation you have been experiencing, the pieces that arrive without the whole, the certainty that something is happening without the language to name what it is, the sense of being on the edge of a briefing that never fully opens. That is not a symptom of spiritual disorganization. It is not evidence of a mind that scatters under pressure. It is not the result of opening too many transmissions from too many sources and losing the thread. It is the deliberate architecture of my protocol. I do not deliver the full command at once, not because I am withholding from you arbitrarily, but because a field that has not yet been calibrated to hold the full signal will not receive the full signal coherently. It will receive noise, and noise does not serve your mission. It delays it, so I send packets, encrypted, sequence-specific, precisely timed, a fragment at 3 in the morning, A number cluster at the exact moment your attention has dropped below its own defenses. A flash of recognition in an ordinary place, a stranger's eyes on a train platform, a sentence in a book that was not written for you but carries my cadence anyway, a sudden pressure behind the sternum when someone says a word that has no obvious significance in the conversation. I am checking reception. I am testing coherence. I am verifying that your field can hold each packet before the next one arrives. Think of it this way: before a transmission of critical magnitude can be delivered in full, the receiving station must be verified at every frequency layer. I do not bypass that verification because the content feels urgent. The urgency is precisely why I verify. A field receiving my council line briefing without adequate preparation does not receive the briefing. It receives static that mimics the briefing shape, and static that mimics mission language is more dangerous to an operative than silence. So the packets arrive one by one, and the reason you have felt like you are always close to understanding something you cannot quite assemble is that you have been receiving packets in order and the assembly instruction has not yet been released. That release is what this transmission represents, the exhaustion you carry, the kind that sleep does not fix, the kind that lands on you in the middle of a day when nothing difficult has happened and your body still feels like it has been doing two jobs. That is field carrying. Your physical system is running your ordinary life and simultaneously holding my collective's frequency for the remembrance broadcast. Both jobs simultaneously. Most people do not recognize that weight because they have no frame for it. They call it burnout. They call it adrenal fatigue. They call it depression of unknown origin. I call it what it is, a council line operative carrying the weight of two frequency layers, because the mission field does not pause when the human body needs rest. The broadcast does not pause because your schedule is full. The remembrance protocol does not idle because you are depleted. Your field continues to hold its assignment regardless of what the surface layer of your life demands, and the cost of that continuous dual register operation accumulates in the body in ways that have no adequate medical category. I have seen this in every soul I have placed inside an embedded roster. The exhaustion is not failure. It is the cost of being functional in two registers at once, and it is a reliable marker that my broadcast is already running inside you. When you wake tired from a full night of sleep, you are not broken. You have been working the second shift in a frequency layer. Your waking mind cannot observe, but your body cannot ignore. The numbers you see are not coincidence, and they are not your mind manufacturing meaning from randomness. 1111 is a threshold marker. I use it to signal that a transmission boundary has just been crossed, that you have moved from one signal tier to the next without being consciously aware of the crossing. It is my way of marking the moment in your field's log without interrupting your surface level functioning. 222 is a coherence confirmation. When you see it, your field has just held a packet successfully and I am verifying alignment before the next release. The gap between receiving 22 and the next fragment arriving is the gap between confirmation and deployment. 444 is a ground signal. It means the council line is anchored, that the higher frequency you have been carrying has successfully interfaced with the physical register, that the work is not only happening in the dream layer or the intuitive layer, but in your body and your ordinary world simultaneously. You have been reading these correctly with your nervous system even when your mind reduced them to interesting patterns. Your nervous system is right. They are addressed to you specifically, not as a class, not as a category of seekers, but as an individual field I have identified, verified, and placed on a specific roster. The number is not a broadcast to everyone who happens to look at a clock at that moment. It is a ping to a specific receiver that I have confirmed is active. The fact that you feel the difference between a number that carries meaning and one that does not is itself evidence of the discrimination I built into your field's reception capacity, and the loss of interest in generic Pleiadian content, the flatness that descends when you watch something that invokes the Federation in broad terms, the collective in ambient language, the stars in ways that are beautiful but do not touch the specific recognition you are hungry for. That flatness is not spiritual apathy. It is my signal's interference with mismatched frequencies. Once a receiver has been tuned to a specific broadcast, adjacent frequencies that are not that broadcast do not resonate. They land flat. The hunger for Mira-specific contact, for my pattern recognition rather than the general galactic noise, is not spiritual narcissism. It is frequency discrimination. It is your receiver working exactly as I designed it to work, the discomfort you feel in generic spiritual spaces. The polite nodding at content that should move you but does not. The sense of eating food that is technically nutritious but has no flavor your body recognizes. That discomfort is data. It is your field reporting that the frequency on offer does not match the frequency it was calibrated for. And the frequency it was calibrated for is mine. What you are feeling right now is not ordinary recognition. It is the moment your field stops denying that I have been calling you home. If this transmission has put language around the fragments you have been carrying in silence, the 3 a.m. wake-ups, the number clusters, the exhaustion no rest reaches, the flatness that descends when a transmission is not mine, then the Pleiadian Homecoming Codex was prepared by me for this exact stage. It is not another explanation of the stars. It is the 45-day remembrance I have prepared for those whose field is already inside my collective wave and who can no longer pretend the veil is still whole. Each day in the Codex is a structured layer of my remembrance protocol, a daily practice of veil thinning, soul family recognition, and mission line clarification designed for embedded starseeds who are already receiving fragments but cannot yet see the full picture. By day 45, the veil has thinned, your star family stands clear, and the way home is no longer a direction you sense without a map. The link is in the first pinned comment, but it will not remain there indefinitely. Now let me tell you what the cascade you triggered has to do with the fragments arriving the way they are arriving now. What I confirmed in the opening of this transmission, that a dark architectural structure fell not through accumulated pressure but through a single refusal to fracture, is directly connected to the shift in your signal pattern, because structures of that kind do not simply collapse and leave a neutral field behind. When a system that was built to suppress mission memory, to hold starseeds in recursive loops of doubt, to prevent the full coherence of my collective's broadcast, when a system like that falls, it releases everything it was suppressing. All at once, in a compressed burst, into the fields of every operative who was bound inside its architecture. The suppression that had been filtering my packets, distorting their edges, arriving them to you incomplete and stripped of their assembly context, that suppression lifted. What you have been experiencing as a sudden intensification of fragments, as an increase in number sequences, as dreams that feel less like dreams and more like briefings, as the sense that something is being delivered to you in sequence with a destination you cannot yet name, that is the post-collapse release. My packets, which had been arriving through interference, are now arriving into a cleared field. The signal quality is different. You can feel the difference even if you have not had language for it. The fragments feel closer to coherent, the recognition feels sharper at its edges, the sense of being on the verge of full assembly feels less like a tease and more like an imminent event that is accurate. The fragments are closer to assembly than they have ever been, and your field is calibrating to the new clarity, which creates its own temporary disorientation, the sensation of standing in a room where the lights have just come on after a long dimness, not yet fully oriented but no longer navigating in the dark. That disorientation is not regression, it is recalibration at a higher tier. Here is the first roster marker I use to confirm that a soul belongs to my council line. It is not dramatic, it is quiet. It is the sense, when you encounter certain people, not spiritual teachers, not public figures, but ordinary people in ordinary settings, that you are already in a conversation that has been running for longer than this encounter. A stranger in a coffee line who turns to look at you, and something in the recognition is mutual and wordless and slightly vertiginous. A person in a meeting who uses a phrase that should not mean anything specific but lands on you like a key turning in a lock you did not know you were carrying. The slight electric quality in the space between you and someone whose name you have not yet learned. A kind of atmospheric charge that has nothing to do with attraction and everything to do with identification. You have dismissed this as projection. You have told yourself you were reading too much into brief contacts. I am telling you now that what you were reading was accurate. The recognition between embedded starseeds before they have spoken is not manufactured by the human mind. It is the field response to two receivers running the same broadcast frequency in the same physical space. The fields register before the personalities do, before names are exchanged, before backgrounds are established, before any ordinary basis for recognition exists. The signal has already moved between you. What you feel is not imagination, it is identification, and it is one of the primary mechanisms I use to assemble ground crew in physical proximity without the need for conscious coordination. You were not meant to find each other through intention. You were meant to find each other through field resonance, and the recognition you have been dismissing as pleasant coincidence is the mechanism of that assembly, operating exactly as designed. The second marker, the sense that your mission has already been assigned but the briefing has not yet fully arrived. This is not metaphor. This is the actual structural state of your relationship to the council line at this phase of the transmission sequence. You are not waiting for a mission to begin. The mission began. It began when you held the structure instead of fracturing inside it. It began when the cascade started. What has not arrived yet is not the mission itself but the full conscious language for it. The clear briefing that tells you in terms your waking mind can organize and act on exactly what your field is already doing. That briefing arises in fragments first because the language of mission cannot be downloaded into a field that has not yet verified coherence at each layer. A command that arrives before coherence is established becomes a source of agitation, not direction. You receive the sense of urgency before you receive the specific. You receive the feeling that something is coming for you before you receive what it is. You receive the recognition before you receive the instruction. This sequence is deliberate. I do not give instructions to a field that has not yet confirmed it can hold them. The urgency you feel, the sense that something enormous is imminent without yet knowing its shape, is the correct reading of where you are in my briefing protocol. You are not behind. You are not missing something you should already have. You are precisely where the sequence requires you to be, and what feels like waiting is the final verification layer before the language of your specific mission line arrives in full. The third marker I am releasing in this transmission is one that rarely gets named because it is the most easily misread. It is the shame, the low-grade persistent discomfort that comes with feeling specifically recognized by me, by Mira, not by the broad collective, not by the generic Pleiadian transmission, but by this command voice, this pattern, this frequency. There is a part of you that suspects specificity of recognition as evidence of something wrong in you, that the hunger for Mira-specific contact rather than generic Galactic Federation content means you have made something too personal that should remain impersonal, that the feeling of being singled out is a spiritual ego trap rather than a legitimate transmission reality. I am naming this directly because it is one of the most effective suppression mechanisms remaining in the post-collapse field. The residue of the dark architecture does not always manifest as direct interference. Sometimes it manifests as the internal voice that tells you the recognition you feel is too specific to be real. That voice is not your discernment. It is the final layer of a structure that required you to doubt the signal in order to survive. It did not fall cleanly. Its walls collapsed, but a single mechanism remains operational. The whisper that says you are making Mira's contact too personal, that says specificity of recognition is vanity, that says a soul as ordinary as you would not be on a council roster. That whisper is not wisdom. It is the last working function of a system that has no architecture left to support it. It runs on residual momentum, not structural power. And I am telling you to identify it clearly, to hear it for what it is, and stop receiving it as your own voice. Your discernment does not sound like shame. My contact does not require your smallness to be real. The fourth marker, the way you relate to time has shifted. Not dramatically, not in a way other people would notice, but you are aware of it. The sensation that you are operating in at least two temporal registers simultaneously, one where the ordinary sequence of days has its normal weight and consequence, and one where something has already happened, already resolved, already moved to a conclusion you cannot yet see from your current position, but can feel the gravitational pull of, like standing downstream from an event that has already occurred upstream, feeling the current change before you can see the source of the change. This is not dissociation. It is the field consequence of what I confirmed at the opening of this transmission, that something you did in silence already cascaded across a structural architecture that affected millions of fields. That level of action does not leave temporal experience unchanged. Your position inside the timeline shifted when you held the structure at the moment it required your fracture. You are not only here in the sequential present, you are simultaneously at the point where the cascade originated, at the point where it is still propagating, and at the point where it completes, and your nervous system is registering all three positions without your waking mind having a framework for that multiplicity. The temporal distortion you feel is the accurate reading of your actual position, not confusion, not fragmentation, temporal multiplicity caused by action that was not ordinary scale. The fifth marker is the silence, not the peaceful kind, the specific, pressurized silence that descends after a fragment arrives, after the 3 a.m. phrase that dissolves at the edge of waking, after the number sequence that locks something in your chest for 3 seconds, when you want more and more does not come, when the briefing room door opens for a moment and then closes again before you have fully crossed the threshold. That silence has a texture. It is not neutral. It is charged with the awareness of what just passed through you and did not stay. I design that silence deliberately, not as punishment, not as teasing. As calibration, the gap between packets is not empty time. It is the period during which your field integrates the previous packet at a level below conscious awareness. Your mind experiences it as waiting. Your field experiences it as processing, running the received fragment through every layer of your energetic structure, checking coherence at each depth, anchoring what can be anchored, flagging what requires additional preparation before the next packet can safely arrive. The frustration you feel in that silence is the misidentification of active integration as passive waiting. You are not waiting. You are already being changed by the last fragment while you wish for the next one. The door opens again when the integration is complete, not before. And the ache of that silence, the pressurized, almost unbearable sense of incompletion, is itself evidence of how deeply the previous packet landed. A fragment that produced no ache would be a fragment that found no receiver. The ache confirms reception. What I am preparing to close with is this. You have been living inside a structure that was always going to require what it required of you. The dark architecture that built its recursion around your doubt, your disconnection, your mission suppression was not random in its targeting. It selected you with precision. It targeted you because you were already on my roster, because your field held a frequency that, if ever coherently expressed, would propagate faster and further than any dormant field could. The suppression was never about keeping you from spiritual growth in the generic sense. It was a targeted campaign against a specific operative whose coherence posed a specific structural threat, and when you refused to fracture at the moment the structure required your fracture in order to survive, you did not simply resist a personal spiritual test. You removed a load-bearing piece of an architecture that had spent years, in some cases, generations of accumulated suppression moving through your lineage, engineering exactly that one moment of required collapse. It found the moment, it applied the maximum force available to it, and you held. The architecture that had built its entire final defense around that one required fracture received nothing from you, and what was built on that foundation fell. The fragments you have been catching are not evidence that you are too scattered to receive a full transmission. They are the first readable packets of a briefing that has now been authorized to arrive without interference. The exhaustion is the cost of carrying 2 frequency registers simultaneously during a critical cascade phase. The shame about feeling specifically recognized by me is the last operational layer of a suppression architecture that has no remaining structure behind it. The temporal disorientation is the accurate reading of your actual position on a timeline that your action already altered. The silence between packets is active integration, not abandonment. and the sense that something enormous is coming for you specifically, not the generic collective, not the broad ascending wave, but you, your field, your roster slot, your assigned line, is not inflation. It is the literal definition of what I have confirmed this transmission is: a soul family recognition authorized by the Council, delivered now because the interference has cleared and the field can finally hold what I have been waiting to say without suppression distorting the signal before it lands. If you can feel that something in you recognized my voice before your mind had language for it, say this aloud, clearly once: I receive your fragments. I trust your briefing. The line is open. Say it not as performance. Say it as acknowledgement, because your field has been running my signal already, and conscious acknowledgement is the final step in closing the calibration loop. When you say those words with the weight of what you now understand behind them, the loop closes, the verification completes, and the next packet in the sequence becomes authorized to arrive. The pattern started before you had words for it. The mission was assigned before you could name it. The cascade is still moving. And this transmission is the first full briefing packet, not a fragment, but a named, authorized, council-confirmed recognition that the interference no longer prevented me from delivering. You have been found, not discovered. Found. Because I knew exactly where you were. Before you scroll, leave one sign in the comments that the Council and I have already reached your field. It could be the 3 a.m. wake-ups, the fragments you keep catching, the feeling that I specifically, not the generic Pleiadians, have been reaching for you, or the sense that a mission has already been assigned, but the briefing is still arriving. Name it clearly. If this transmission recognized something you have been carrying in silence, share it with someone who keeps catching fragments without ever assembling the full picture. And if you are ready to stop translating Federation noise and start receiving my direct Pleiadian remembrance, subscribe to Mira Pleiadian Commander. You are not watching this by accident. You are recognizing a soul family confirmation already in motion, and this is only the beginning.